I think we can go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone who's here for joining us today. This is our first Toast Tuesday talk that's part of a larger series of talks called Toast Tuesdays. The first few will be open to the public, and then after those ones, they will be exclusively for those who are members of our membership program, which is called the Samson Club. If you're interested in more information about that, you can find all of the information on our website. There's different tiers that you can join at, and each tier members receive different perks. So we have a lot of exclusive Oxbow merchandise designed and made by Oxbow staff. We have these Toast Tuesday talks, which are open to all members, and then we will have a series of workshops, which will be open to some of the higher tiers. So keep an eye out for all of that information. If you're interested, you could find more information about that on our website. But I'm really excited for today's Toast talk. I would imagine that just about everyone in here, if you've been to Oxbow, you understand the reference to toast, but in case there's anyone who hasn't been to Oxbow, we have this infamous, wonderful place called the Toast Bar in our kitchen, which you could see in the image that I'm screen sharing right now. And it is always fully stocked with different kinds of bread and hot sauce and honey and peanut butter and anything you could imagine that would be yummy on toast. And there is a collection of ephemera behind the Toast Bar that highlights different people's favorite toast recipes. It's like a great, wonderful gathering place on campus, especially when people get hungry between meals or after hours, after a dance party. The Toast Bar is always there. So we've created this lunchtime series, which will feature different Oxbow staff members in conversation with Oxbow community members. And so today we have Ciera McKissick in conversation with Cecilia Beaven. And I am going to just dive in and read both of their bios. So bear with me while I get that pulled up. Okay.
Oh, good. No, that's all good.
Currently based in Chicago, Cecilia Beaven explores narrative and develops a speculative mythology through painting, drawing, comics, animation, and sculpture. She questions who gets to establish the official cultural narratives and affirms her creative energy by modifying existing tales and mythology, seamlessly adding fiction and personal anecdotes. Beaven's multidisciplinary artwork has been shown in solo exhibitions in Mexico City, Houston, and Chicago, as well as in group exhibitions in Mexico, the United States, Colombia, Sweden, Italy, and Japan. In 2019, she was awarded the Leroy Neiman Foundation Fellowship at Oxbow. In 2020, she was invited as a resident at the Mono Rojo Ceramics Workshop in Mexico City. A current Radical Studio resident at Hyde Park Art Center, Beaven holds an MFA in studio art from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, which she attended as a Fulbright scholar, and a BFA with honors from NPEG La Esmeralda, Mexico City. And Cecilia and I were both on campus my first summer at Oxbow and worked in the office together. So it's really fun to have you back, Ceci, in this capacity. I'm excited to hear more about what you've been up to since the summer we shared at Oxbow together. And then Ciera McKissick will be interviewing Ceci, and Ciera is on staff here at Oxbow. Ciera Elise McKissick is an independent writer, curator, cultural producer, and the founder of AM/FM, an organization that supports emerging artists in art, music, and fashion through web content, exhibitions, and events. She created AM/FM, originally a web magazine, as an independent study project in 2009 at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she graduated with a BA in journalism and mass communications. Her work since then often involves collaboration through supporting by POC artists, local arts organizations, and seeks to stimulate community engagement that's driven by inclusivity, accessibility, intention, and care. She is also the coordinator of public programs at the Hyde Park Arts Center and communications associate at Oxbow School of Art. So thank you both for being here today. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Ciera, and you, Ceci. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you
Sorry,
so much.
Ciera.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us here today. Really excited to hear more about what you've been up to since Oxbow, hear more about how it impacted your career and your practice as well, and just kind of catch up a bit. I'm super glad to have finally met you. I know our paths have seemingly crossed in many different ways, but we're meeting together for the first time virtually. I remember an exhibition that you had at SAIC in the gallery there. I used to go over there and hang out on my lunch breaks and stuff, and super immersive. Loved like the huge alligator head and things like that you were doing.
Thank you.
Movement. So exciting to see how the work has evolved since then.
Excited to show.
Yes. So first questions first. I know this is Toast Tuesday, and we know how much toast is super important to Oxbow. I would just love to know like what your favorite toast recipe is, and if you ever had any interesting times at the Toast Bar at Oxbow.
So, well, for the interesting times, I think the best time for me to go to the bar was after the parties that we had. Just like having a late night snack always felt good. And because it was like a late night snack and I'm Mexican, the thing that you would do is like get something spicy to it in Mexico. So that's what I always crave. So that was my favorite toast, that one that was spicy. So I'd put like hot sauce and then honey on top. And it was just so good and so like satisfying at that time.
Oh wow, I definitely have to try that hot sauce and honey.
I know, it was very good actually.
Yeah, I've had like I'm a little gluten intolerant, like it's something that's new to me, so I can't eat as much toast anymore. But when I do make toast, I like to get super fancy and like have a really nice like sourdough or rye bread with some caramelized onions and like a jam, and then I'll always put sriracha on top or something like that for like a spicy kind of sweet flavor. But yeah,
it sounds delicious.
No, I'll definitely have to try some honey and some hot sauce. That sounds awesome. Yeah. Do you have any other fond kitchen memories? I know we came out with a cookbook, and people love Oxbow for the food as well too. And especially coming from a city like Mexico City, I'm sure you've eaten delicious food out there. But any fond kitchen memories?
It was good every day. Honestly, that's like the one thing that I knew was going to be amazing each day. The dinners would always be really good, and I liked when they were trying out like different foods from different parts of the world. And sometimes like we had the Mexican nights on, I think it was Thursdays.
Yeah.
So that was always fun, but it was also cool to just like try out different things that maybe I hadn't tried before, and just felt like even if we were the whole summer at one place, it felt like a very diverse and like varied cultural experience to have all those dinners. So
yeah, definitely. I know
it was good.
Our chef Aaron is really interested in like exploring some of those things, and is influenced a lot by like Malaysian cultures and things like that too. So definitely love the food. But interesting that you brought up being there for the whole summer. I would love to hear about how having a fellowship at Oxbow impacted your practice or your career, and what it was like being there for an entire summer.
Mm-hmm. It definitely impacted my career. So I had never done a residency before, so it was like my first one, and it was a very long one, very immersive one. Also, I'm from Mexico City, and other than living in Mexico City, I've lived in Chicago, so my living experiences have been super urban. And I had never spent so much time in like a nature environment as that time. So it just felt like truly disconnecting from everything, and that kind of changed my mind. I felt like I don't know, like I could be at peace in a way that maybe I hadn't discovered before, just because we're always so busy in the cities. I was also paying a lot of attention to little things like bugs. I at first I was like scared of bugs, and then I was fascinated with them and like taking photos and making drawings of them.
Yeah.
The plants or the sunsets, the sunrises. I was just like very perceptive to everything that was happening there, and that definitely informed my work, I think, in a positive way, especially the work that I did while I was a fellow.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place, like being able to see the sunset at the lagoon and then seeing the trees reflected in the water. Like there's some amazing opportunities to really be at peace with nature. I know that you mentioned, I read an article that you were featured in, and you mentioned how difficult it was for you coming from Mexico City and having to kind of conform to this idea of a studio practice. Can you talk a bit about that and how Oxbow being your first residency and having a studio there, how you were able to kind of adapt in a new environment and work in a way that was a bit more rigorous, but also more loose and playful?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's in Mexico City. I was working at a studio that I had with my friends, and it was kind of like a very open experience. And then when I came here, I came to be a student at SAIC to do an MFA. And so it was very different because it was super structured. We had our studios and open access to them, but still it felt structured because it's within an academic environment.
Yeah.
So after that, having the studio at Oxbow kind of felt liberating again. Just like even if it was a little structured, it wasn't that much.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of felt like the studio expanded to the whole campus because it was, like the whole place allowed for creation and for art making. I also took a ceramics class, so I was also part of that environment, and I would like make drawings outside. So the studio, I had a confined studio, but it didn't feel, confined at all because it just expanded to like a big campus and the whole nature.
Yeah, that's definitely a plus about Oxbow. If you want to kind of dabble and learn at a lot of different things, it's important to have access to spaces like that. Being able to expand your practice and expand or try something new that you would have never tried before and see how that works its way itself into your practice. Would you say that you had any pivotal moments or like aha moments within your work or just within your time up at Oxbow?
Yeah, like a memory that I have very clear in my head is like the color palette of the sunsets at Oxbow. They're truly crazy, and like those like very strong pinks and purples in the sky like marked me a lot, and I feel like they stayed as part of like my work, and now they're like essential to my color palette.
Yeah.
So that's something for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and also the ceramics class that I took there, I really loved it. It was the wood-fired ceramics class. And I kept doing ceramics after that. So I had tried doing ceramics a little bit in my undergrad several years ago, but I don't know, it wasn't as impactful as the experience at Oxbow. And now I feel like ceramics are part of my practice, and I hope I just keep doing ceramics for a very long time.
Yeah, I love the little figurines and things that you've been making. And since we're on the subject of like some of the work that you've made at Oxbow, how about we take a look at some of the things that you made there if you want to talk a bit about some of that work?
Sure. So I can share. Oh, Molly, I think you have to enable screen sharing.
Try again.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is some of the work that I did while at Expo. So I started with this one that I feel like talks about that moment of like being mesmerized with the sky and the sunset and the colors.
can definitely
Um,
get there.
yeah. So I was like layering a lot of like very thin layers of paint and building environments with that. This was part of one of the first shows that we had at the gallery during the summer, which was called Oxbow Now and Then. So on the left, we can see I was paired with Phyllis Bramson, which I think it was just a coincidence, but I really appreciated that because I advised with her during grad school.
Oh, perfect.
So it just felt like nice to be close to her work. I really love her work.
That's awesome.
There were other artists that I really admire as part of the show. So there's a shot of how the show looked like on the right side.
Beautiful. Yeah,
And then
I love this one with the comics layered on top with the painting and drawings too.
yeah, so this is like the last piece or like a culmination of the summer there. During the whole summer, I was making like the paintings, like the previous one we saw, and that one is actually part of this piece now. So I was making all the paintings, and then I thought they were part of like a bigger narrative. So I did this like big scale painting, drawing, comic, narrative piece that included all the paintings that I had done, and then I also drew on the canvas and added some more like frames as to make like a comic, but a little like loose narrative comic.
Yeah, I do have a question about your work with comics and
Yeah.
kind of this character that you include of yourself as well too.
Mm-hmm.
That shows up as a motif in a lot of your work. What does that represent for you, or like how does that evolve the story and like inserting yourself and evolve the piece?
Yeah, I've been using my character for many years now, and I think of it as like just like a portrait of like being self-conscious. What does it mean to be self-conscious and like analyze oneself, be introspective? So I use my character in that way, and it's also just like creating a character that can literally inhabit all the worlds that I build for it. So that's also exciting for me. And I usually draw my character naked. Not every time, but usually. And I just feel like that's kind of like a very straight up metaphor for like trying to be honest, trying to be transparent, trying to show things as they are. And also I just feel like it's fun to have like a female figure like being playful and naked and not like sexy or anything, just like so I enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I love the playful, kind of whimsical nature of some of your work, and oftentimes you'll include animal motifs as well too. I know like the jaguar will show up often, and there's also the alligator piece that I was talking about before. Do these animals have any sort of symbolism or meaning for you, and how do they continue to evolve, like as the pieces?
Yeah, they all come from like narrative and mythological interests that I have. That's something that I love and that truly inspires my work. I read a lot of stories and I do research on different mythologies. In particular, I like the Mexican mythology, and within that, the Aztec mythology, because that's the narratives that existed in the city where I'm from. So those were the first stories that were told there, and to me, it's just very meaningful to engage with the first narratives that existed. So some of my characters come from those stories, but then I kind of allow myself to use them in my own way and make them part of my own narratives. So they travel with me and they adapt to new spaces as well. I also like doing research on other mythologies. So that's something else that I did while I was at Oxbow. I was doing research the whole summer on the Potawatomi people and in particular on their mythology. So I read a lot of myths and legends that they had. And then, of course, I was fascinated by that. And so I didn't use it straight up in my work because it wouldn't be my place. But one of the myths that I read was about the creation, and it had to do with this god Whiske, who's the creator, um, who was like traveling in a lagoon in Lake Michigan, and there was nothing, there was no land, there was only the lake, and the god was like traveling lost in the lagoon, and he couldn't find soil to build like land.
Wow.
So I started with the canoe on the like left top corner of this image, and to me that had like that meaning of like, it was just fascinating to think that the lake, which is something that I could see at Oxbow, and also I can see from Chicago, the same lake, was like my everyday view for, I don't know, like 2 years or 2.5 years, and then to think that for these people that was like the biggest water that they had seen, they probably never saw the ocean or anything else. It was so big and so majestic that they truly thought that that was the beginning of the world. Like it for sure started there, and the god was like traveling in the canoe. So yeah, I just
I
love
love that story. Yeah, I'm
I
gonna
know,
have
it's
to
so
look that
pretty.
up. That's amazing. And awesome that you are able to incorporate it subtly into your work and like take from other types of mythologies, but not super overtly, having that consciousness as
Yeah.
well. I know that Oxbow is also on Indian and Native American land, so definitely much needed research as well too.
Yeah, it was fun to do. So that was part of what I did when I was at the office working with Molly. I was doing that research, and I really enjoyed it. So these are some details of that piece. I was very like reflective on what I was doing in my time there.
Yeah, there was also a bit that I read about your use of black in your pieces on the plane and how they represent sort of rabbit holes for you. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, in the paintings, I use black a lot like that. Like I feel like it kind of plays both parts of like, it could be a very deep background, or also the opposite. It could be like something that's floating on top, and then I kind of like playing with this like like rabbit holes, and like literally from like cartoons, like old Looney Tunes cartoons, when you see a hole and
Yes,
they
moves around.
yeah,
And
exactly. They lift it and they put it somewhere, and then you can
yeah,
fall, and it just like takes you to a different place or dimension. And
yeah.
I love that idea, so I play with black in that, within that, those more cartoony narratives a lot.
Yeah, can you talk a bit about the cartoony narratives? I know that I was reading something about something that you said and how you're so drawn to this type of narrative and like work, and how you can't almost escape being a part of that type of world. What really draws you to like cartoonery or like comics and all those things? And I know you've been drawing since you were a young child. How did you kind of get into that?
Yeah, that's exactly the answer. I started drawing when I was very little, and I was obsessed with cartoons. As a kid, I grew up in the 90s, so I was watching a bunch of like very 90s cartoons, and I was obsessed. And that's how I started drawing, because I wanted to copy like the cartoons that I saw. I loved the drawings, and I wanted to make them myself. Eventually, I started to also take art lessons and go to museums, and that was like a second like visual education that I had. But I feel like the first like visual excitement that I felt as a kid was came definitely from cartoons.
Oh,
So
wow.
so I just kind of like to respect that and keep it
Yeah.
part of my work, because it's part of myself.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what your favorite cartoon was, but then I remembered that you're from Mexico City, and I wondered if they had different types of cartoons there than they do.
No, I think we got all the American cartoons, so we
Yeah.
probably saw the same things.
Yeah.
But like one of my favorites when I was very little was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, awesome. Yes. Donatello and Michelangelo. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like totally in love with Raphael. That was my first love in my life.
That's funny. Well, it makes sense that there's so much like animal imagery and like they're pretty beefy. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
totally. These are some ceramics works that I did while I was there. So I did this with Dove's help when they were teaching a workshop.
Yes.
And then these are some of the wood-fired ceramics that I did.
Awesome. That texture and detail on there, like the carving. And I know like
Yeah,
artisans and ceramics is also very, very big in Mexico. I went to
yeah, yeah.
Mexico City in 2019 too, and I think I brought home an entire bag of ceramics that I
Oh,
want
cool.
to
Yeah,
have.
that's the
Yeah,
best thing you can get.
really, really great stuff. And also like lino cut woodworking prints and things like that too. And I love the
Yeah.
color on some of these. They're like that natural brown and bronze kind of color really makes these stand out as well too.
Yeah, which is that was a new color palette for me to work with because I'm usually more like into bright colors and more maybe like more cartoony colors, and then wood fire ceramics just have a completely different set of colors that are natural to the medium. So that was really fun to experiment with.
Yeah, that's definitely
Um,
huge. Oh yeah,
that's all the characters that I created while I was there.
love these. Yeah, those are beautiful. Awesome.
So yeah, that's all I have for Oxbow, and then I brought some after Oxbow images.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk a bit about how all of these different mediums play off of one another in your work, because I know that you do ceramics, you also do animation and drawing. So how do all of these things, do they overlap or incorporate with one another? And what is the conversation between the different mediums that you choose?
Yeah, no, they definitely overlap, and I just kind of see them all as part of the same universe in which I have this crazy energy to be creating things all the time and building little worlds with them. I feel like my practice is always it's always following this like maximalist logic and like expansive logic.
Yeah.
So I feel like all these different things are part of the same universe. I play with the same characters, the same kind of ideas. But sometimes it just feels right that something has to be, I don't know, like a more conventional narrative. So then I do a comic with it. Or if the narrative is more open ended and more about perception, then I feel like a painting would be the right way. Or if I want to materialize a character, then maybe ceramics. So I just pick the media depending on like what I want to say. And then I love combining things and doing like installations with everything together. That I feel like that's when the work feels the most complete.
Yeah, I love those types of installation works where you can get a bit of everything. So what have
Uh,
you, I know you had a residency in Mexico City in 2020, which is
uh-huh.
quite a feat or like an awesome thing since so much of the world shut down, and to be able to continue on with the residency. Kind of how was that for you? Like going back home to Mexico City and also doing a residency at the same time while the world was kind of in shambles.
Yeah, well, it was a very hectic year, obviously. So for me, it was hectic in many ways. In the way that it was hectic for everybody with the pandemic. Also, I lost my mom a little before the world shut down, so that was another layer of just craziness. Like,
Hear that?
and then the third thing is that my visa expired here, and I was applying for a new one, so for a work visa this time instead of a student visa. And everything just got delayed because of the pandemic. So the embassies were closed, and people were not working normal shifts, and everything was delayed. And then Trump was trying to stop people from getting work visas, a bunch of things. Um, so anyway, for the fall, I had to go back to Mexico because I wasn't eligible for work in the US in that time.
Mhm.
So I went back to Mexico, and that was actually good for me because my friends who have this ceramic studio, that's like a little studio, they only invite people to do residencies with them. They're not like open to the public.
Okay.
They invited me to be a resident in the time that I was there. So that's the studio Mono Rojo that Molly mentioned. And
Yeah.
I started to create some pieces with them. These are part of that.
Oh, these are awesome.
Thank you. So I learned a lot. They also had this work of working collaboratively, so that was really fun to do, and it felt great in that time. I really needed something like that, and I just felt like I had their support and I could be creative and do a lot with my hands in that time.
Yeah, especially after all of that, having the things that you experienced and went through, being able to have this cathartic art experience, something that's very tactile that you can kind of really dive into. And I
Right.
know that you also started working with tapestries and weaving. Can you talk a bit about some of that newer work too?
Yeah, so that happened kind of like as a coincidence. I was teaching a class during the spring at SAIC, and as an instructor, you can take a class as well. So I wanted to try something new, and I decided to take loom weaving.
Awesome.
So yeah, I was taking loom weaving, and I kind of just learned the basics of loom weaving, and then the shutdown started.
Yeah.
So that was actually like a great skill to have when the shutdown started, because it's something that you can do at home.
Yeah. You
It
just
doesn't take much space.
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't create like toxic smells or anything. It's like uh, and also the material, like the yarn, felt very good in that time because it's like cozy, and it was just like the right thing
Yeah.
in that period of time.
Oh,
So those are the ones that I liked the best from that time.
yes, I love these. And there seems to be like different, or did you learn any different type of weaving techniques and things that you were able to kind of do?
Yeah, well, I learned truly the basics, and then because the class got canceled once the pandemic started, so we didn't even get to finish the course.
Oh, wow.
But like with the basics, I kind of like experimented and just did what I could, and the images kind of like built themselves in a way that I wasn't like planning, because I don't have the right skills to do what I want. So
Yeah,
it was also fun to work with that layer of chance.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love the like abstract nature of these, the piecing together. This one on the right is really, really awesome because I can see like your signature figure and like self-portrait there,
Mhm.
mixed in between all the shapes and colors too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that you also in the past had done a mural at the border of the US and Mexico. Can you
Right.
talk a bit about that and how you got involved in being able to do something like that and what the piece um, was inspired by?
Yeah, so that happened a while ago. That was in 2013. Um, I was I did a big project that year, not that one, another mural that was this advertising campaign for a big brand in Mexico, and that sort of like made my work have a lot of visibility that I wasn't having before. That helped my work a lot, and then thanks to that, I got invited to do projects at other cities and other places, and one of those was this border project.
Hmm.
So they do this art festival in Tijuana, which is in the border with San Diego,
Mhm.
which is called En Tijuanarte. And they invited me to that festival, and they commissioned me to paint a segment of the border wall between Mexico and the United States. So it was very challenging for me because that wall is obviously charged with
Yeah.
political and social. I mean, it's just like crazy.
All the things, all the things.
Yeah, everything at the same time.
It's been interesting how artists have been able to have conversations. I've seen some really great kind of activations where they had like seesaws through or
Yeah.
like a long dinner table where people could kind of eat together on either side. So
Yeah, they've done all these different things, and it's very interesting. So the people from Tijuana are very active in that way, in inviting artists to, yeah, either paint or do actions or all sorts of artistic projects. So yeah, it's a very active city, and the border is very, very interesting to see. Anyway, I was thinking of, I don't have a photo in the presentation, but I was thinking of the wall as a door, and the idea of borders as doors, and how for Mexicans these doors can be sometimes closed for you for your whole existence, and you don't get to open it and see what's on the other side. Sometimes it's like fully open for you, or sometimes there's a lock and you manage to get the key for the lock, which I don't know, that could be like visas or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was thinking in those like very literal terms, and I painted a diagram that sort of like showed all these different possibilities. And it was with my style, like very cartoony, and it had my character portraying each one of the possibilities.
Yeah.
It was a great experience and very strong for me. I got to meet a lot of people that had been like just deported and were trying to like start their lives from zero. A bunch of people that had crossed many times, and for them it was like nothing to cross illegally like that. And I just got to learn so much about that border and the experience of migrants. That was very different from my own experience, because I come from a different background and I hadn't experienced the border in that way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing more about that. Yeah, I was really fascinated by that. Do you know if it's still there, or are these things kind of impermanent?
I mean, it was supposed to be there as long as it could. I haven't been, so I don't really know, but it's on the outside. The wall is not really a wall. It's like a fence of like rusty metal.
Mm.
So if it's there, it must be super mistreated. Probably it has graffiti on top. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, cool.
But yeah. These are some of the more recent paintings. These are the ones that are behind me in my studio as well.
Yes. And speaking of your studio, so you currently have a residency at the Hyde Park Arts Center. You just started there recently, and it's a year-long residency for the Radical residency. Can you talk a bit about some of the things that you plan to work on, or that you're excited about, kind of exploring, or if you've even had time to even think about all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited that I have a studio to be at the whole year, and the community at the art center is super supportive and really nice people. Everybody's very nice. So I'm just excited to be here and have the space and the freedom to do things. I want to do everything, but that's me always. So I want to keep painting. I want to keep doing ceramics. I'm taking a ceramics class right now at the art center as well. So I'm also working on that. And then I guess something that's a little newer is that I'm trying to build a book with my comic books that I've done, like the little comic pieces that I've done. I haven't compiled them yet into a book, so that's something that I want to do this year, and also do a more like a comprehensive graphic narrative and like novel thing, if I can.
Oh, I love that. I would definitely check that out. I love graphic
So
novels.
that's my objective, like bigger scale objective for this year.
Awesome. Sounds like you're really into long-term residencies, being somewhere for a long period of time.
Yeah, now that I know it's an option, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. I feel like art processes are slow. They need a lot of time to do research, to be reflective, to write down ideas, to trial and error. I don't know. So it feels good to have the support for doing that.
Yeah, I think oftentimes, especially for residencies that are shorter, for like 2 weeks or something like that, or even a couple of days, some of them are, the time that you spend getting acclimated or like figuring out what it is that you want to do, unless you come in with a set project at mind, you're scratching the surface or like really getting into the meat of things by the time it's time to go. So I definitely think that these longer term residencies offer more space for exploration and incubation also.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think that's all that I brought. So this is the last image. This is part of the exhibition that's at the art center right now. It's a ground floor biennial, and I created this mural that includes my ceramic pieces. And
Yes, I love those.
so
Well,
yeah,
thank you so much for sharing that work with us. Let me do a time check. I think we got
thank
about
you.
15 minutes left. I wanted to see if there's any questions from any folks from the audience or anything for Cecilia? I have a couple more, but if anyone else wants to ask any. Feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and add them here.
I have a question, Ceci.
Yeah.
I know, so following your fellowship at Oxbow, you began teaching at SAIC, right? Do I have that timeline?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, so how has teaching, and I think you're continuing to teach from what I understand, how has that, or has it influenced your practice, your process? I know for me, when I'm teaching, it has a really direct impact on my work, and so I'm curious what that transition was like for you into teaching.
Yeah, it definitely has a big effect on myself too. So yeah, I got an offer actually while I was at Oxbow to teach at SAIC, and that was very exciting for me. And I was teaching comics at first. For 1 year, I was teaching comics, and then right now I'm teaching painting practice, and I've loved both classes. And it's just great to be in contact with young minds and new ideas and see what these people are up to. They really see things in a different way, and they have all these references of like young artists that I get to know because of them. So I feel like it's a very beautiful exchange of knowledge. I give them what I have, and they give me a lot as well, even if maybe they're not realizing or it's not even their intention. They're just like giving the whole time, and I feel like it's the best way to stay in touch with like newer ideas by being an educator. Also, SAIC is one of another like very supportive community that I'm very grateful to. So I just love being part of it, and I love the faculty there and the students. So yeah, I love teaching.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that it's been going well. And yeah, I remember early conversations with you when you had gotten that offer from SAIC to teach.
Yeah, I was so excited and so nervous.
Yeah.
It's funny because now it seems just like part of my life, and I don't think about it that much, but it was such a big deal at first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's definitely great. And I'm part of the painting and drawing department, which is the same department where I did my MFA at. So feels super familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has it been virtually teaching?
Well, right now I'm teaching in person. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my painting class is in person, which is great. Honestly, I really missed having in-person classes. We follow, of course, all the regulations. I have a smaller class. We have all these like sanitation rules. So it's different than it would be usually.
Yeah.
But it's really nice, and it just feels good to see painting in person and talk about it in person.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. And before that, I was teaching comics virtually. For comics, it actually works very well. That's what I learned. I feel like it's one of the disciplines in visual arts that can adapt the best to the online environment. Because the images are meant to be shared and reproduced, whereas painting, it has more of like the uniqueness and the materiality. And
yeah, that's awesome. We'll have to get you to come teach a comics class or something at Oxbow one of these days.
I think I'll do an online one in the summer.
No, that should be awesome. Or like right on the meadow. We do have a question from the chat. Andrew Carmichael, sorry if I pronounced your last name incorrectly, says, I really like the painting with animal skins. Why do you use those specific animals? And I know you touched a bit about this earlier about the mythological folklore, but if you'd like to elaborate more.
Yeah, so this one is playing with the skins. I was drawing from a particular Aztec myth of a god that uses the skins of other humans, actually. Aztecs could be super violent. So this is one myth of a god that takes the skins of like the enemies and then he wears them as his own skin to be like stronger. So it's like a warrior kind of thing. And I decided to play with that myth. And I was during the pandemic thinking of strength, like how I needed to be strong, and we all needed to be like strong and resilient and optimistic, even if it didn't seem like the right time to be optimistic. So in those terms, I picked this animal, which is like a jaguar, but it's actually like a Mexican species. It's called ocelote. I don't know what's the right word in English for that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the heads and things like that around.
Yeah. So I was playing with that as like a figure of strength that I thought was very, like, it conveys strength visually because it's a feline and it's very strong and like majestic and beautiful. And then my own character, and just like try to build a conversation between them. Like, what if I could wear the skin of this animal and the animal could wear my skin, and just like, I don't know, being playful but also reflective on strength and how to come up, just like how to deal with these times.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I saw that the animal was wearing your skin. So what kind of qualities or attributes would you say that the leopard could instill from you by wearing your skin?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm even if I try to steal his strength, maybe I'm the one who's strong actually. So I'm playing on that game, like, who's the strong one? Who, like, do you have to look strong to actually be strong?
Yeah,
You know,
that's true. That's
like
true.
is strength something that comes from inside or outside? Or so yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, but that's kind of the purpose of the piece, to like ask that question. I don't really have the
Yeah,
answer.
I love that. We have another question from Camille G. She wants to know what artists inspire you lately.
Oh my god, well, I don't know, so many. I look a lot at graphic narratives, so like graphic novels and comics, and that's always a source of inspiration for me. And I feel like it relates more to like the cartoons and that kind of like graphic love that I had as a kid. So in those terms, I really like Michael DeForge right now, Anna Highfish. Those are like two artists that I've been looking at a lot. In terms of like direct influence and inspiration, I have a close relationship with Candida Alvarez, an artist from Chicago.
Love her. Yeah.
Yeah, I love her too.
Yeah.
So she was my advisor while I was at SAIC, and then I was her studio assistant for a while, and now we just stayed friends. But she's definitely a regular life source of inspiration. Just seeing her work and how she's supportive to the community, and she has also been very supportive to me personally, and I love her. She has, I feel like, that same energy that I have of like creating all the time and like dealing with very hard stuff through art. So that's always inspiring for me.
Yeah, I can see the color influencer like play between the two of you as well. I went to see, I think that was one of the last shows I went to see actually before the pandemic. Her show at Monique Molosh Gallery,
Yeah,
big steel sculptures with the pieces on them. So
yeah. I helped to install that.
yeah,
That's when I
figured.
was assisting her. It was such a beautiful show.
Yeah, so
I
amazing.
talked about the recent hurricane in Puerto Rico. So that was like her way of dealing with that disaster and like how her community was being impacted. And I just thought it was such a beautiful and like positive way of doing a response to such a strong event.
Yeah. Maybe just one more question since you're talking about that now, about how your work is really vibrant and really playful, but yet you're able to kind of tackle different types of issues. What types of social issues or things do you infuse within your work, even though they come across as like these playful things?
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like I'm constantly thinking about. Since I moved to Chicago, I'm catching myself thinking a lot about my cultural identity and what does it mean and what does it mean when I'm out of my country. And I really try to play with that and like put that question out there without falling into the cliches that I usually see of like how Mexico looks like or how Mexican culture looks like.
Yeah.
So I tried to escape that to show a different view of what Mexico is, what it means for me, what it means right now. So that's one. Another one that I don't know if it's exactly social or more personal or maybe both because it's so sincere, but I think a lot about like all these like existential questions that I ask. So I feel like with my character, like the naked character inhabiting all these like existential, playful, absurd narratives, I'm trying to touch on these questions of like the human condition right now in our time and how we deal with that. So I'm offering like one way of dealing with it, and I know there are so many, but yeah, I feel like this is maybe like a universal question that we all have.
Yeah, definitely. That was another thing that I wanted to touch on too, about how much of the work is personal and how much of the work is myth, because I know you intersperse them between one another. Or maybe that's for you to know and for the viewer not to.
Yeah, exactly. I really love blurring the line between the two, and I feel like it's also like an act of like taking agency. So to be a little like less respectful with like the institutional accounts of what culture is or isn't, and just taking what I want, what I find is inspiring, and then blending it with sort of like my own world, and yeah, not really being didactic about what's actual part of the culture and what's not.
Yeah, you can't give it all away.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your work and your practice and what you've been up to since Oxbow with us today. I'm very excited to see what work comes out of your current residency and just the future of the trajectory of your practice and career. We at Oxbow appreciate you and are grateful that you spent so much time with us and have come back. So if you want to talk a bit about your course that you're teaching this summer, maybe for folks who might want to sign up or are interested in comics or anything like that, we can close out.
Sure. Yeah. I'll be teaching an online course on graphic narratives, so comics, but it's focused on surreal narratives. So I feel like that's what I can do the best, like exactly following what I was saying of like blurring lines between myth and fiction, or fiction and reality. So it's focused on those kind of stories, and we're gonna look a lot of like the Chicago Imagists and also a lot of Latin American narratives, and it's just like a fun blend of influences and artists.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for joining us here today. Very much appreciate your presence over this lunch hour. Hope you guys can get some toast sometime soon. I'm gonna find some gluten-free bread so I can eat some also. But thank you all so much. Please, if you have more information that you want to learn about our Samson Club membership, the first two of these talks are open to the public, but the rest are for members only. And you can find out more information at oxbow.org/Samson-club. Right on our website. So thank you so much. And if you have more questions, Molly, our membership coordinator, can answer any of those questions for you via email as well too. But thanks so much for coming to the First Toast Tuesday. Everyone have a great
Thanks,
rest.
everyone. Thank you, Ciera. Thank you, Ceci.
Thank you, guys. It was great to see you. And thank you, everybody.
Nice to see you too. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.